The judge said Zholia Alemi's wicked deception meant she worked with some potentially very vulnerable people over a long period of time.
Both this certificate and a supporting document had spelling mistakes on.
Judge Hilary Manley described her as highly manipulative and cunning.
How, in her words, such clearly false documents were ever accepted.
Zholia Alemi faked her way through the medical system for over 20 years, earning over £1 million. For over 2 decades, she was prescribing powerful drugs directly to patients and detaining them. But the hospitals that hired her never noticed a thing. She was only exposed after trying to take control of an elderly widow's estate. In 2016, Alemi met Gillian Belham, an elderly widow in Cumbria, at a clinic in Workington. Belham was not one of Alemi's friends or relatives. Alemi entered her life as a medical professional. She was there as a psychiatrist, giving an opinion on whether Belham could still live at home and manage her own affairs. Within months, prosecutors said Alemi had worked her way into Belham's life and redrafted her will. Under that new will, Alemi was appointed executor and became the main beneficiary. She stood to inherit a cottage, and another £300,000 was meant to be held in trust. Belham's family and charities that were originally meant to benefit were pushed out. Instead, the money went in a way that helped Alemi and her own family, with Belham's assets being placed into a trust dedicated entirely to Alemi's own grandchildren. Alemi was also accused of stealing Belham's bank cards, banking papers, financial documents, and 33 watches. In October 2018, Alemi was convicted at Carlisle Crown Court of fraud and theft charges and sentenced to 5 years in prison for trying to defraud Belham out of her estate. She was heading to jail as a common thief, but pulling on that single thread unraveled a much larger deception. It turned out her entire presence in the country relied on a title she had stolen decades earlier. Since 1995, Alemi had worked in the UK under the authority of a registered doctor, handling hospitals and taking charge of vulnerable patients who could be locked away under mental health law. But the paperwork that got her into the job in the first place was fake. Alemi was born in Iran in 1962 and studied in New Zealand before moving to the UK. She went to the University of Auckland, but official records showed she only finished the early part of her classes, not the full medical degree you actually need to call yourself a doctor. She spent enough time in the system to learn the medical talk, the paperwork, and exactly how a real doctor acts on paper. But court stories showed she failed her training and was kicked out. Official records showed she completed a Bachelor of Human Biology in 1992, but she never completed the medical degree. She later enrolled on the MBCHB, passed first year, failed second year, and was not allowed to repeat or finish the course.
In reality, she had failed her course in the first year and forged her degree certification and letter of verification. This included typos such as the spelling of verified with an A instead of an E.
Instead of leaving medicine behind, prosecutors said she forged her degree and a verification letter to create the version of herself she wanted the system to believe in. So in 1995, Alemi applied to the General Medical Council through the Commonwealth route, which was open to doctors who qualified in certain countries like New Zealand. This system allowed them to apply for UK registration based on their home country qualification, bypassing the PLAB exam that many other overseas trained doctors had to pass. This route was meant to simplify the process for legitimate doctors, but Alemi's lie worked because she gave the GMC papers that appeared to prove she had the right credentials. Prosecutors said she used a forged medical degree certificate and a forged verification letter from the University of Auckland. The deception succeeded despite a glaring lack of quality in the forged paperwork itself. As the investigation later revealed, the documents contained basic errors that should have immediately raised suspicion during any standard compliance review.
Zholia Alemi's degree that she awarded to herself when she dropped out of medical school. Both this certificate and a supporting document had spelling mistakes on. They were never picked up on, so she spent more than 20 years as a fake doctor.
It's hard to believe the GMC actually missed something this sloppy, but the fake paperwork was accepted by the GMC despite basic errors. She didn't stop with a fake degree either. She also made up recommendation letters from a hospital in Pakistan, giving her a whole stack of fake papers to show around. Every new lie just built on top of the last one. The system simply gave her fake paperwork a door to walk through. Once the GMC accepted the documents, she was officially on the UK medical register, which immediately made her look legitimate to hospitals, agencies, patients, and other doctors. Years later, the GMC noted that Alemi had entered through a section of the Medical Act that was repealed in 2003, making it unavailable to new applicants. But by that point, Alemi had already spent years inside the system. Once Alemi gained registration, she moved through the UK medical system for more than 20 years instead of staying hidden in one place. The court later found out there was a reason for all this traveling because she kept changing jobs to make sure nobody had time to get suspicious. Every time she showed up at a new hospital, she had the perfect cover since she was already registered, she had experience, and she was already on the inside. She worked almost non-stop for public hospitals and private clinics across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, making over £1 million along the way. In 2003, she climbed even higher. She worked in Northern Ireland and Manchester before passing tests with the Royal College of Psychiatrists to become a top consultant. By 2012, she had become a Section 12 practitioner, giving her authority linked to detaining patients under mental health law. Getting this official stamp of approval gave her huge power over her patients, letting a total fake doctor decide who got locked away or medicated.
She had the ability to section patients and prescribe dangerous and powerful drugs under Section 5 of the UK's Mental Health Act.
All of these real achievements were built on a total lie. The fraud kept working because every hospital she went to just took her first registration as absolute proof, never once bothering to double check if she was telling the truth. Alemi did not go completely unnoticed during her career. The General Medical Council actually got 9 different complaints about her over 23 years. Those complaints were about the way she treated people, but nobody ever checked the main thing behind it all, which was whether she even had a medical degree. The system looked at her file multiple times, but they only focused on her job performance instead of checking if she had the right to be there in the first place. Because every hospital just trusted her initial registration, her lie survived every single time she changed jobs. Long before her fake degree was found, the GMC already had major complaints about her. In 2013, a coworker reported her for bullying and unprofessional behavior, and the investigation showed she hid this check from her employers and overstepped boundaries with a patient. In 2014, the police told the GMC she allegedly assaulted a police officer, which she also hid from her bosses. By October 2015, conditions had been placed on her practice. In June 2017, after the GMC received information about her arrest in the Belham case, she was suspended from the register. In 2018, a medical practitioners tribunal put her on trial for lying on her forms to renew her official status to lock up patients. The tribunal found she hid the ongoing investigations and lied on purpose, but the official records still called her Dr. Alemi. The system caught her being dishonest, but they still treated her like a real doctor with behavioral problem instead of a fraud who faked her entire degree. Prosecutors said Alemi must have treated hundreds of patients while unqualified, potentially putting them at risk. These were vulnerable people dealing with severe mental illness, trauma, heavy medications, and choices about their own freedom. Her fake background gave her serious influence over treatment, medication, assessments, and detention decisions. After Alemi was exposed, health boards had to look back through old records to find out exactly who she treated. In Scotland, she worked as a temporary psychiatrist for 18 months from 2007 at NHS Ayrshire and Arran, where she treated 395 adults. She also worked for several other Scottish health boards, including Greater Glasgow and Clyde, NHS Tayside, NHS Borders, NHS Highland, and NHS Grampian. Reports showed she used the Mental Health Act to lock up 24 patients in the Ayrshire and Arran area alone before her background came to light. One specific case connected to her career was Darren King, an autistic man with epilepsy who later drowned in a bath after a seizure. Alemi had treated him for years before it happened. Legally, an expert who looked at the case said Alemi's treatment of Darren was actually reasonable, and the official investigation did not blame her for his death. Still, it left his family with the reality that a major person in charge of his care was pretending to be a psychiatrist without ever finishing medical school. Even when Alemi was not directly blamed for a specific tragedy, the damage was already done. For many patients and families, finding out the truth meant looking back at old appointments, prescriptions, and hospital files with total doubt, leaving them to live with choices made by a complete fraud. A hospital check or an official review did not catch her. Instead, after Alemi went to prison in 2018 for trying to steal the widow's money, a local reporter, Phil Coleman, started digging into her past. He called the University of Auckland in New Zealand and found out she never actually finished the medical degree she used to get her UK job. The police later confirmed that the reporter's call proved Alemi did not have the degrees she claimed to own. Her whole career crashed down because one reporter made the simple check that health officials and hospitals missed for over 20 years. After the reporter found the truth, the police started a massive investigation into her past, showing just how huge the lie really was. What shocked the police most was how easy it was to break a £1 million fraud that had lasted for over 2 decades.
It took just 3 phone calls.
I was staggered. Here we were, 2 phone calls to New Zealand and it was confirmed, and a 3rd phone call to the GMC in the UK to confirm that she never qualified anywhere else. So indeed she had been working as an unqualified doctor in the UK for 22 years.
When the police looked past her work history, they found proof that she planned everything out. They searched a house she owned in Northern Ireland and found a briefcase hidden in a cupboard under the stairs. Inside the briefcase, investigators found part of what prosecutors described as a forger's kit, including rub-on lettering sheets and paper where she had practiced making fake certificates. This proof showed she did not use computers to change things. She did everything by hand using real tools, blank paper, and test versions to build the fake degree that got her into the UK medical system back in 1995. The search showed exactly how much hard work she put into making the fake papers that started her entire career. In February 2023, Zholia Alemi was convicted at Manchester Crown Court of 13 counts of fraud, 2 counts of forgery, 3 counts of deception, and 2 counts of using material to falsify medical qualifications. On February 28, 2023, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison. When the trial ended, the judge slammed both Alemi for risking patients' lives and the medical board for letting the lie go on since 1995.
The judge said Zholia Alemi's wicked deception meant she worked with some potentially very vulnerable people over a long period of time. The judge also had harsh words for the General Medical Council, which registers doctors to work, for its abject failure to check her qualifications.
During the final sentencing hearing, the bench addressed the calculated nature of the deception, focusing entirely on her predatory personality.
Judge Hilary Manley described her as highly manipulative and cunning.
Because the case exposed deep vulnerabilities in public safety verification. The judge called for the GMC to carry out a thorough and open inquiry into how such clearly false documents were accepted.
On sentencing, Judge Hilary Manley has called for an inquiry into the General Medical Council, asking how, in her words, such clearly false documents were ever accepted.
Alemi tried to fight her conviction and sentence in 2024. Her lawyers raised arguments about her autism diagnosis, access to prosecution evidence, and human rights. But the Court of Appeal rejected the challenge and left her 7-year sentence in place. By 2025, officials calculated that Alemi had gained just over £1.2 million from the fraud. The court found she still had about £406,000 available, so she was ordered to pay that money back to the NHS or face an extra 2.5 years in prison. The NHS Counter-Fraud Authority confirmed this order covered all her known assets, giving her 3 months to complete the repayment. After Alemi was caught, the GMC checked thousands of other doctors who had used that same old application process. The review did not find a wave of fake doctors. It found something narrower. Alemi's fake documents had slipped through and stayed useful for more than 2 decades. Let me know your thoughts on this case down below. Subscribe for more stories like this, and I will see you in the next one.